So, good day and welcome again to our continued conversations. For those joining for the first time, we're building on various conversations regarding the kingdom, why man was created, why God is mindful of man. I did English in my high school and I know how to break words. So, mindful means his mind is full. The angels came to him and asked him, Who is man that you are mindful of him? Tell us, what is this that in creation you all sat as a Trinity and created man in your own image and likeness? There is an intriguing aspect in this person called man that is trusted to become your representation on earth. That even the angels summoned God and asked him, Please tell us, who is man that you are mindful of him? You created him a little lower than angels. You have put everything under him. Everything that you created, you said to him, have dominion and rule on my behalf. Who is this man and what did you have in mind when you created man? And let him come on earth fully assured that he will represent you exactly as you had determined. That's a conversation we're having. And in today's conversation, we're going to look at God's rest, the place of rest, the uniqueness of rest. I know where we are sitting, both as a country, as a continent, Africa, and the turmoil in the world, there's a general restlessness. And all of it is anchored largely financial. Because as in the fall, the one place that Satan knew he could master stroke everything was get people into a system, a rat race of chasing the things that pertain to what you wear, what you eat, where you rest or live, and defining life as a function of those things. No wonder people ask themselves, what do you do? Instead of people wanting to know, who are you? Who are you would refer to the intricacies of who a person really is. And that's what we need to engage with. But the casualness of life takes us to what we have and what you do. And we place emphasis on people based on their credentials or their linkages and connections. There's another way, and that's the way we're talking about today. So as I said, there's a general restlessness across. And a restlessness signifies a lack of peace and a state of no rest. So what is rest? Rest is really a state, a calm state. What is the opposite of rest? Turmoil, pressure, and all those things. But you can enter a rest, which is a place of peace. Ephesians says that Philippians talks about let this mind be in you, but Ephesians says, may the peace of God passes all understanding, guard and garrison your mind and heart in him. So there's a way the peace of God guards your mind, commands a staying together of your mind. Because if you falter in the mind, you're done. That's where it all starts and that's where it all ends. That peace is designated to come and guard and garrison your heart and mind so that you are strong and you're stable and ultimately enter into his peace. 2 Peter 1 talks about these great and precious promises that God has given us through the knowledge of him. So the knowledge of him allows us grace, which is divine empowerment, and into precious promises. So grace and peace through the knowledge of God, that he now gives us great and precious promises. And then it says, so that by this great and precious promises that come through grace and peace, you might be able to enter into divine nature, which is an entry into God. There is an entry into divine nature. It is possible. And it comes via grace and peace through the knowledge of Him. And that's why the people that do know their God shall be strong and they'll do exploits. So you enter through grace and peace in the knowledge of Him. You get connected to His divine nature, that is into the essence of God Himself. And then with this, you are able to escape corruption that comes through desire. So there is a promise for rest and peace through divine nature on the platform of knowledge. In Genesis, we're going to read on the aspect of creation, and we're going to see where God creates and takes rest. We find this in Genesis 2, verse 1 and 3 to 3. It says, and on the seventh day, note seventh day. Seventh is known as the day of rest. And on the seventh day, God ended His work. Remember, He was doing creation every day from the first to the sixth. But I'm amazed that they take record, and on the seventh day, He ended His work which He had done. That means there was a closure and completion of the set of things that He was doing in creation. Not only did He end, but it says that He rested on the seventh day from all His work which He had done. It's amazing that they have to take cognizance that God is in creation. But a day comes, the seventh day comes. God Himself is recorded. He takes a rest. And then it says, from all the work He has done, that means the work is completed. There is a place and an entry into rest. And God shows us Himself, the essence of rest. And then it goes on and says, then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Sanctified means He set it apart. Because in it, inside that setting apart, He rested from all His work which God had created and had made. Amazing that we can document and read a testimony of God Himself in relation to the aspect of rest. God, who is almighty, all-knowing, all-able, can put down on record the essence of rest. And that's what we're exploring today. There is significance in rest as demonstrated by God. And we who are His representation on earth need to understand what was the thinking behind this rest. Why was it needed? And how can a man rest from all his work that he has done as part of his creation? I want to further read in Hebrews 4, 9 to 11. It refers back to Genesis and says that there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. Remember, they said that He rested. But now we are being told that there remains therefore a rest to the people of God. How does this rest come in? It says, for he that has entered into his rest, that means into God's rest, he has also ceased from his own works. So rest is ceasing from your own works. There is another rest. He says, see this one on the seventh day. I promise you, there is coming another rest. And how will you know that rest? It is when a man and when a woman ceases from his own works and enters into God's rest as God did from his, borrowing from the pattern that you see in Genesis 2. that God entered. It says he ceased from his works, which he had created and had made. And therefore, it says, let us labor. Now, not labor in doing. The laboring we are being encouraged here is that let us labor to enter into that rest. That is the labor that we are supposed to be involved in. A labor to enter into his rest. That promised rest. Remember, there remaineth a rest to the people of God. There is in this program a purposed rest as a promise to him or her who identifies with God, as a promise. And it says when this rest kicks in, a man shall enter and cease from his own works as God did, as we have read in Genesis 2. And then admonishes us and says, if there's any labor you're going to be found in, if there's any work you're going to be doing, let that labor be the labor that brings you into that kind of rest. Lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. So if you are established in faith into this kind of rest, you will be able to cease from your own labors. I want to help you practically understand what this means. In Matthew 6, he says, from verse 33, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. So seek ye first the kingdom of God. Before I used to think seek ye first God. There is God, but there's also the kingdom. You want to seek, what is this kingdom? He says, to the poor, he has given his kingdom. Then he says, it's God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. So he says, seek ye first that kingdom and his righteousness, the essence of God. And then he says, and all these things that the Gentiles run after shall be added unto you. He says, for God knows that you have need of these things. He's not unaware. He is aware you have need of these things. But he shows you the formula to enter into that space of that or those things. And he says the formula is labor to know the kingdom. Labor to enter into my righteousness. And I guarantee you as my child, have full faith that I know you have need of these things. And in my knowledge of these things being brought to you, mine is to give you the how-to that makes you assured of those things. And the how-to is anchored in seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And then all these things become additions to you. Now, it's a complex but very simple thing. And the complexity comes because man has been trained to labor for everything. Man has been trained by the system to work and to try and get things to make his comfort assured. Now you realize that every rat race, whether rich, middle, or low, is geared to one end, a rest. They are all looking for a rest. So if I have a house that I own, not the one that I rent, I will rest from paying rent. I will rest from the hassles of a landlord. So instead of enjoying the gift that comes without any strings, the rat race is trying to get to rest. Somebody wants to buy a car that is not buying in installments. He's looking for financial rest. Everybody is searching for a rest. And I want to tell you that there is rest. Hebrews 4 has told us clearly that there remaineth another rest. And in this other rest, the uniqueness of this rest is that a man ceases from all his labors. There is an ability to cease from all your struggles. There's an ability to cease from all that you know and invite you to his rest where your mind is stayed on him. He says, He keepeth thee in perfect peace, he whose mind is stayed on Him. That my mind is stayed on Him. It will not waver on the pressures of the day and the disconnects of life as it seems, because in the first place, that is not life. Matthew 6 earlier says, do not worry about what you shall wear and what you shall eat, for life is more than the body. Life is more than the shelter. That is not life. But Satan has cleverly coined life to be the things that you're chasing. So there's an invitation today where man can enter into the rest of God and cease from all his labors. And therefore a clarion call is made to us today, that as God rested from his labor on the seventh day, and it was sanctified, there is a journey and a possibility for a man and a woman to enter into God's rest, where you cease from your labors. And I want to invite you, as I have described, to this kind of rest. It is anchored on knowledge and understanding. That as you prioritize the kingdom, as you seek to know God, have an assurance that He knows that you have need of these things. He will show you the how-to. He will trigger men that needs to bring to you. The reference that you can use to begin to build yourself into this kind of engagement is that the Israelites in their day, when they needed provision, God in His humor would send manna and designate that manna by program, that every day it will answer to their needs unfailingly. And when it came to the weekend, because the Sabbath had been documented as a holy, set aside day, sanctified it like we read, He said on that day, a double formula will kick in the sense that the one of Saturday, or the sixth day, for those who have issues on which days rest and Sabbath. But on the sixth day, the manna of that day will have ability to transcend to the seventh day and act as fresh as it's supposed to be. And He made one rule and told them, this is the rule of manna. Do not store more than you require. Do not try and keep, because that's the method of the world. You try and store more than you require. The storing you must make must be in seed time, so that a harvest is always generating. A keeping away begins to push your treasure to something else. And like we said in our previous conversation, we said that where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And then we also realized that no man can serve two masters. Christ told them it is impossible for a man to serve two masters. He will love one and hate the other. He will hold on to one and despise the other. So when you begin to keep aside as your security, you have begun a process of building a treasure outside your main treasure, which is God, and you begin to now have your confidence and hold in the thing you have kept aside. Unknown to you is that money is going to fail very soon, as it did in the days of Joseph. And you will need to learn how to transcend the aspect of life without money, dependent on His provision, because that day is coming. And a lot of people are going to be caught because they have put their confidence in mammon. And I want to tell you one thing today, that money is not a store of value. Money is a medium of exchange. What does that mean? That overnight, the value of that paper can be zero, like this. There are countries that have zero-rated all their wealth overnight. You wake up tomorrow morning and everybody is equalized. What are you going to do if your faith is on the instrument called dollar and or euro or shilling? You will need to move your trust in God. Delight in storing up in Him. May I be found casting my seed, like in Ecclesiastes. It says, cast your seed, Ecclesiastes 11, because you don't know where it's going to fall and you don't know which day it's going to come up. But it says you will be assured of a harvest every day. And that was depicted by manna. God made sure that no man stored more than he required for the day. But there were some clever people like today. Some of you are very clever, you think. And you know what happened? As they stored, it began to decay. That is the wisdom of God, so that a man can only anchor his trust in God and understand that there is a way to live that exempts you from the hurdles and labors. The writer of Hebrews says, come, let me invite you into this rest. Come and cease from all your works. The last example I want to draw for you are the disciples who had toiled all night when they went to fish. And Christ comes to their boat and asks them, what are you guys up to? And says, Master, you know we've been here all night. But one of them said something more interesting. Not only have we been here all night, but we have caught nothing. You can be in business all years and have nothing to show. And when Christ now comes into that picture, the same place they had been, he says, now cast your nets on the right side. Some of you, your mind goes to right-hand side. But it's more than right-hand side. It means cast your net to the place I show you, which is the correct place where the fish is. The Bible records and tells us that they got a harvest that was heavier than they could pull out and needed all their concerted effort. Simply because one instruction comes in and says, cast your net at the correct place. That is rest. And that is the pattern of rest, where you cease from all your labors. They had toiled all night, and Christ invites them to a place of rest. I want to tell you that this rest is possible. This rest is real, but it needs to be explored. We need to labor to enter into this rest. And this rest is anchored in the knowledge of God. There are ways to enter into it through knowledge. And that's the invitation that we have. And that is the essence of work. Let our work be the work that gets us into this kind of rest. We cease from our labors and we enter into a place that God can be glorified. That is the true representation. And that is what the kingdom is all about. It's a new day, a new and living way. It is doable. Let's get to doing it. God bless you.